everyone, and welcome back to Dollar Dialogue. As we begin our very new season 2 and our very first episode, episode number 1, we are not just opening a new chapter for this podcast, we are stepping into a transformation that is actively reshaping how businesses operate, how markets evolve, and how economies function on a global scale. Today's episode is titled Episode number 1, The Economics of Intelligence, AI, Firms, and the Future of Work. Because artificial intelligence now, today, is no longer theoretical. It is no longer confined to research labs or speculative discussions about the future. It is here, it is embedded, and more importantly, it is scaling at a pace that is fundamentally altering the economic landscape. Firms today are no longer simply adopting AI as a tool, they are restructuring around it. Decision making is becoming increasingly data driven, operations are becoming more automated, and competitive advantage is no longer defined solely by capital or labor, but by intelligence itself. And that raises a critical question. If previous technological revolutions mechanized human effort, are we now witnessing the automation of human thought? Because what distinguishes this moment is not just efficiency, but capability. AI doesn't just reduce costs, it expands what firms are capable of achieving. It changes how quickly they can adapt, how accurately they can predict, and how effectively they can compete. But with that transformation comes a set of deeper economic tensions. As productivity rises, who actually captures those gains? As firms grow more powerful, what happens to the competition? And as algorithms begin to replicate cognitive tasks, what becomes of human labor in the modern economy? So, in today's episode, we'll be unpacking artificial intelligence through three key economic lenses. We'll begin with the labor market, examining how AI is reshaping employment, skills, and the future of work. We'll then move into the economies of AI models themselves, comparing platforms like ChatGPT and Claude, as well as DeepSeek from China, and questioning how these firms generate value in a space defined by high cost and uncertain profitability. And finally, we'll step back and evaluate the bigger picture, growth, inequality, and the broader trade offs that come with AI driven progress. So, now before we get into the discussion, I'm joined today by a fantastic panel. First, we have Mr. Masrur Mehadi, an IBDP Economics HL and Business Management student who has gone on to pursue and did a summer course related to economics and finance at the University of Warwick, a highly competitive and esteemed program. We are also joined by three of our four esteemed hosts, Demir Hossan, Zohaan Rana, and Zumar Sheikh, who will be bringing in their perspectives across today's discussion. So, Master, do you have anything else to say to introduce yourself?
No, just thank you for having me here, and I hope we have a very fruitful discussion on the use of artificial intelligence in businesses.
Thank you so much, Master. With that, let's get into our first segment, AI and the future of the labor market. And just to set the stage before we open it up, there are a few key ideas worth keeping in mind. First, AI is not just automating routine or manual tasks. It's increasingly capable of performing cognitive work, and that's what makes this shift fundamentally different from previous technological changes. Second, while there's a lot of concern around job displacement, there's also the argument that AI will create new roles and industries, raising the question of whether we're actually facing job loss or simply job transformation. And third, there's the issue of distribution. Even if AI does increase overall productivity, those gains may not be shared evenly, particularly between high skill and low skill workers. So, with that in mind, I want to start bringing this to the panel. Do we see AI as a net threat to employment or as a force that ultimately reshapes and strengthens the labor market?
Thank you, Supreet, for the beautiful introduction. So I would love to start off the podcast right now. We're in the early stages of AI. It's only been a few years, so we haven't really seen a huge hit to the job market, but it's still been super significant. In the past year, in 2025, according to data shown, over 100,000 workers were laid off due to AI attributed due to AI, and it's due to finance, logistics, consulting, media, and it's because AI is just more efficient. AI is more better according to these CEOs and these firms. Please, Umar, would you like to add on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on by I believe at the beginning of the year, Amazon laid off 40% of its employees and replaced them with artificial intelligence. And that really sparked a debate between companies, pressure groups, and a lot more. Supreet, would you like to say something?
No, I see. If you have anything else to say, Zumar, continue on. If not, I want to hand off the mic to our guest speaker, Masrur Mehadi, as well, who I can see is full of excitement and unable to control himself, fully ready to speak
Yeah,
more.
Master, how about let's pass the torch to you?
Thank you. Adding on to Supreet's initial discussion, how we have seen changes in historically, we have seen changes. For example, during the Industrial Revolution, we saw how more people are moving away from the farm life and agriculture to more into cities, and that did cause a loss of jobs. But then also, what's different about this AI shift is that, like Supreet said, AI are able to get towards a more cognitive and adaptable skill base, which is what is making a difference. So in I see, and to Zohan's point earlier, where more than 100,000 jobs have been lost, I do believe that these jobs, this is going to be a loss for the economy. But at the same time, we're going to also start seeing new jobs. For example, AI engineers, analysts, and we're going into a world where we're going to be more data driven. From what I think, from analyzing statistics and data, and I believe AI and getting these AI data analysis is where these new jobs are going to come from. So yes, initially there may be a huge loss of jobs because of some skills that simply don't require human effort as it once did. But I also see a shift towards a more jobs that will require the use of AI and people monitoring that use, or sort of editing that use of AI. Demir, you raised your hand. Do you want to talk about something else?
Yes, thank you. I just want to discuss how, while many jobs are at risk because of AI, there are also some jobs which I think have now gained a higher importance within the economy, such as the job of electricians or construction men, as these are jobs which I believe that AI cannot fully replicate or do. So I believe it's unique that these jobs are now becoming much more prominent in our industries. Furthermore, jobs such as teaching or psychologists, again, like these require human connection and human discussion, which is something which I don't think is able to replicate. Zumar, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would like to add on where in history, in all of modern history itself, the increase of technology or the betterment of technology itself created more jobs. But in as of like our 21st century, especially in the past couple of decades where artificial intelligence has risen in popularity and use, you've started to notice how jobs have like the unemployment rates in many different countries have started to increase because of the use of artificial intelligence. And yes, to Master's point and to your point as well, some jobs cannot be replaced with artificial intelligence, but most jobs that can be automated with artificial intelligence will in the future be replaced with artificial intelligence. Supreet, did you raise your hand?
No, Zumar, I haven't. I'm sorry. I see Damir has something to add.
Also, I want to discuss how this revolution of AI, I think, will fundamentally change our understanding of economics, as both in the Keynesian and neoclassical models, we always assume that wages and resource prices would, in the Keynesian we assume it's sticky, whereas in neoclassical we assume it can change. But now with AI, it's fundamentally different, as I believe now AI does not need to sleep, AI does not need food, AI does not get burnt out compared to human and labor. So I think the introduction of AI into economies will completely change our economic understanding, and it will require new models and new ideas. Arf and then Master, please. Thank you.
So far from the discussions and like the prior knowledge I have with like AI, we could probably already say that AI is like, it's like not just um like an automating like routine for like manual tasks. It's like increasingly capable of performing like most cognitive work, and that's like what makes the shift like fundamentally different from previous technological changes. And secondly, while there's like a lot of concern around the job displacement, there's also like the argument that AI will also create new roles and industries, which raises the question of whether we're actually facing job loss or just simply job like transformation or like something like that, like job innovation. And lastly, I could also talk about like a huge issue of distribution. So like even if AI does not increase overall productivity, like those gains may not be shared like evenly, and like also between like high skill and low skill workers. But one interesting thing I could also talk about would be over here when we're talking about jobs, we're talking about like normal jobs and stuff, right? Like corporate jobs. Another corporate like job or something like a issue like that I could talk about would be the fact that big companies like you could say Goldman Sachs or like other large firms like JP Morgan or something like that. I'm wondering like what will happen to those firms, because they are also like, for example, I saw some report the other day about like some like big large firms, I cannot like remember the name right now. They were talking about transforming about 30% of their jobs in their firms um to like make it fully AI. And like that's kind of interesting because the people who those firms hire are like they're students from like big universities, for example, like you can say Harvard, Princeton, or like the Ivy Leagues or something like that. That's pretty interesting because all those investments those kids are actually like putting into all those studying and stuff like that, and they're actually looking up to like jobs or internships in like big companies or big firms, like for example JP Morgan or like banks. What will happen to them? Like what would their next step be? So yeah, that was just one concern I just want to talk about. But if there's anything else you guys want to share regarding that issue, you guys could, yeah, tag along, I guess.
Master, I think you have a
Beautifully
very
said,
good
Araf.
idea.
I agree with you, and all of these questions that you have been asking are very important to the core concept of, is AI actually good for economics and for the world in general or not? And I find it really interesting that you have brought up these firms, the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, because just to add on a little bit more detail, is that they've started to use AI much more. They've started to lay off their workers, and to go into more detail, Goldman Sachs is laying off their junior analysts as AI is much more efficient and productive, which connects to Demir's point of AI is more efficient compared to humans. And for JP Morgan, they also started to lay off analysts and workers, and they've started using AI for their loan agreements, which is very interesting. So these firms really trust AI for such sensitive topics, showing that AI is coming in and it's coming in fast for the job market. And we need to start weighing the pros and cons, right? AI is more productive, AI is more efficient, but is it's going to affect the population very negatively because a lot of people are getting laid off. There's unemployment is taking a huge dip right now. And Master, would you like to add on to that?
Yes, adding on with what you said earlier, seeing big firms like the Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, firms that are world renowned and they've been successful for multiple years, having them making step towards laying off their analysts, where in just a few years ago, getting a job as even just a junior analyst at one of these firms was considered so valuable and you would consider to be intelligent and reputable. But now, since it's AI is taking over, this just shows that even the top firms and the top businesses where it's so hard to already get a job, it's going to be even more difficult because of the usage of AI. And then moving on with what Zohan is saying, that there is a sense of trust that these firms are showing, but where's this trust really going to head towards? Because at the end of the day, with what you coming back to what you said about the loan agreement, um, there is an aspect of a human relation that these firms require to build these, to get their loans, to have in their data analysis. And this aspect of a human relation of knowing when you're making a business with someone is simply is not something AI will be able to have. So I do see this as one sort of con in AI. But then the pros of AI is that whether it does have this human relation or not, it will give you a completely unbiased opinion as well as a opinion based on data and facts as well. Zumar, I think you had a point connecting to this. Could you elaborate?
No, I did not have a point. I believe Araf was the one that wanted to speak.
I believe we should let Demir go first, as Demir has his hand raised for a while.
All right.
Thank you guys so much. So, going on this idea of AI trust, my question is, what if a government were to utilize and make use of this AI trust? Do you guys think that would be considered ethical or not? Because I think it's very interesting as we're discussing this total human dependence on AI, and I feel that some companies or some governments may be willing to make use of that. So, what do you guys think about that? Arf,
I
please,
think,
thoughts?
sorry, Damir, if you may let me jump in here. I think
Yes.
that the use of AI in governments has a negative impact and a positive impact at the same time. Firms like Oracle and Anthropic and a bunch of other firms usually do cut deals with the government uh, to help navigate through whatever problem that they're facing currently. I believe Oracle is a firm. I believe Oracle is a firm that utilizes its abilities to help out the government and identifying criminals, identifying whatever else the government needs, biometrics, and all that. And this did replace some jobs in the. Yeah, thanks, guys. Araf, I
So,
think
yeah, yeah, no
I
problem.
think you can
Zohan,
add
I
on.
know you like raised your hand a bit for a bit, but like, I'll just tag along for this because
No,
it's kind of interesting.
please go, Arab, please.
Okay, okay. So, I feel like governments already experiment with AI for things like, I don't know, you could say tax fraud detection or like public services and economic forecast or something like that. And then, like, you could also see reports from organizations such as the World Economic Forum and the International Monetary Fund. They actually suggest that AI will likely become a core tool in like economic policy and regulations, which the governments will use. And yeah, so they could use AI to like analyze huge amounts of data about citizens. For example, like systems to like tied with like facial recognition or like large scale monitoring, like that type of stuff. But of course, with that being said, that could also bring in privacy concerns or something like that, because that is like a powerful tool that which the society actually needs to be a bit more comfortable with, and the government
Araf,
can just like out of
Araf,
nowhere.
can I cut in for a second?
Yeah, no problem.
I
Yeah,
think
go
what
for
you
it.
said about the government or people being okay with using AI, it's a very important factor to realize because of the ethics involved in using AI. It's not a human that does the work, it's a robot that's programmed to do the work. And I think that will have significant impacts on education levels across the world.
Yeah,
Araf,
I could see exactly what you're trying to say. Not only that, another interesting thing I could point out would be like another day, like the other day I actually read like an article about like a country like actually suing an AI company for like some regulations that they actually passed over, which is kind of interesting because we could already see the consequences of AI being involved in like government issues, and how it's affecting like the people or like the administration in like in a different way.
That's very interesting, Arav. Thank you for that input. Um, in this discussion, I feel like we have really weighed on the cons of AI, but it's also important to look at the part where AI actually creates jobs. So I just want to add a little bit of input in that sense. So AI creates jobs as there can be engineers who actually build AI and AI software for companies, leading to more engineer jobs around the world. There can be also jobs about people integrating those AI softwares into the firm, which brings in more, which AI clearly shows that AI brings in more jobs. And cybersecurity is also a very big part of where we can use AI as, in this case, there's obviously pros and cons to surveillance, but it's important to have some kind of surveillance to protect national interests and to protect people. So integrating AI into the government might be a little bit iffy, but it might create jobs as well. So I know that AI, with the usage of AI in different firms, it's leading to a very high rate of unemployment, but it's also bringing in another opportunity for others to jump into the workforce and actually use AI in a positive manner whilst actually working and getting paid. Master, I know you've been waiting for a while, so would you like to go?
Yes. So just adding on to your point, there is pros of AI because it does create a sense of different jobs, jobs that we wouldn't see before. I mean, previously we would never see a job of someone like, for example, a prompt engineer for AIs, because eventually it will come to a point where someone, an individual, will need to build these softwares for the AI and then integrate them into firms. But then when the firms are using it, there is a point of ethics that does come back into it. So I think this is another area where we can see a job as well, where people look into the ethics of AI and actually analyze what is AI ethically used for, because AI sort of operates in a sort of gray area. I mean, for example, if you have a business in country X, you will have to follow the rules and regulations of that country, and you'll have to follow the law and order. But an AI won't necessarily have to follow that because they operate in their own software. They operate in their own sort of internet bubble. So it does create a sort of gray area for how we can use AI, and in what ways it can AI and in what ways can these AI ethical jobs look like. So yeah, I think Demir wants to add on to something.
Speaking on bubbles, thank you, Master. I think a good question we should ask is there a bubble for this AI revolution? Is there a limit to which we can get to? Because there are some similarities between the AI revolution we're seeing and the 2008 stock market, the 2008 housing crisis. What I mean by that is the total trust. Because before 2008, Americans truly believed the housing market would never fail and it was the most strong strongest part of the economy. And I feel that same sentiment is growing within AI. So is it possible that there's a limit to which AI can take over employment and jobs? And yeah, that's my main question. Thank you.
Demir, before anyone speaks, I just want to add on to all of you guys, Zohan, Master, and Demir. You all three of you have said that AI does create jobs, but I just want to play devil's advocate here with you. How, when you compare how many jobs AI is taking away versus replacing, especially where the jobs that you need for like maintenance of AI is highly, like, it requires a high level of education, whether that be coding or a deep understanding of artificial intelligence itself. Would anyone like to respond? Master, I believe you would have a very good response to this, our expert here.
Yes, it does require a high level of intelligence, but also we're also just at the beginning of this AI sort of revolution, which what some might say. Additionally, this high level of education is now sort of, we can see more and more people using AI to gain a higher level of education. So it's almost like a circle where people are using AI to learn more, but at the same time, they will eventually need to use that sort of higher education to sort of build the AI software or to sort of program it. So I think yes, at initially we might see a more decrease of jobs, but then eventually over time we might see that these jobs are sort of that more people are gaining jobs through the usage of AI.
Yeah, thank you for your input, Master. And I just want to
I would also
leech
like to
off with
answer
what you
Zumar's.
said here.
I
Give
would
me a
also
second.
like to
Give me a
answer. I
second,
would also
Zobhan.
like.
I just want Master to continue with what he was talking about. I think you are totally right. I think that in the future, AI will help us educate ourselves and learn more about the world and knowledge. But do you think there is a right way and a wrong way to use AI? And do you think AI should be integrated into businesses where rather than laying off employees, they help maintain the ordinance of the business itself.
Yeah, just connecting back, just to my last point. We've seen in economics where the market almost self-corrects. The market will self-correct, and this is sort of what I was trying to get into in my previous point. And secondly, staying on the topic of jobs and the employment rates, I think eventually that AI, like I said before, AI initially may create a loss of jobs, but eventually it will start creating a gain of jobs, and then I think we'll discuss this more into one of our later topics. But I believe Zohan had a previous point. So could Zohan, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, Zumar, I would like to answer your original question in the sense that I agree with you in the sense that yes, AI will make people lose jobs, but how can we stop that? That's just the nature of business, right? Businesses want a more efficient and cheaper way to make money, right? And we can't stop that. So of course, firms and businesses will use AI because it's just a more efficient way to actually uphold their business and their values, and we can't stop that. But eventually, AI is going to create jobs, as Master said before. But adding on what the Master said is that I do agree to the point that the market will self correct, but in other situations, like Demir said, in the 2008 crisis, the government did have to intervene. So just to make a little prediction, maybe the government has to intervene, as AI might be taking too many jobs. We don't know, but it's just a little prediction. But yeah, Supreet.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Zohan Rana, for this insightful addition, and thank you everybody uh, for your encouraging and analytical discussion in this segment. Building on this, I want to shift our focus slightly away from individuals, away from households and human beings, and toward the firms driving this transformation. Because when we talk about platforms like ChatGPT by OpenAI or Claude by Anthropic, in reality, we're not just comparing two chatbots. We are looking at two fundamentally different approaches to building and monetizing AI. So, on the surface, both firms appear to be generating comparable levels of revenue. OpenAI, for instance, is estimated to be on track for roughly $20 billion in annual revenue, largely driven by ChatGPT subscriptions and API usage, etc. Anthropic, on the other hand, despite having a significantly smaller user base, around 50 to 100 million people, while ChatGPT caters to over 1.5 billion people. That's a big difference. 150 million people use Anthropic, while almost a billion people use ChatGPT. Anthropic still has an estimated similar revenue range of around 18 to 19 billion dollars. That's just $1 billion behind ChatGPT. And this is driven heavily by enterprise partnerships and integrations. And it's also important to look at the losses. OpenAI is burning through several billion dollars annually, around 14 to billion, $15 billion in losses annually, while Anthropic faces similar technical costs, around $6 billion annually. But its model is focused and catered more towards businesses, and thus it generates higher revenue per client. And by working with companies directly and embedding Claude into workflows, the business is able to monetize through long-term contracts rather than purely mass market subscriptions. So this is where you start to see a clear contrast.
Supreet,
And
if you don't mind, can I please add on?
you can definitely add on as soon as I lay out a few instigating questions.
Of course,
So,
of course.
AI is as transformating as it's claimed to be. Why are these firms still struggling to convert that into consistent profit? Are we looking at a market where scale eventually wins, where capturing users today leads to dominance tomorrow? Or is the future more about precision, where enterprise focused high value applications prove to be more sustainable? And lastly, similar to previous tech revolutions, is profitability really a key goal, or is it secondary to market positioning? Thank you. So Zumar, you wanted to add on something. I remember you were very excited.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on by saying that firms don't necessarily only use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini for their work. It's a very tailored and new thing that is beginning to show itself within our economy and firms itself. And Supreet, I just wanted to say that profitability for firms is one of their key goals, but I feel as if in the case of AI, it can become secondary to like positioning, especially in the short term. A lot of companies are investing heavily into AI right now as they're tailoring certain AI programs. But as I believe Master said a long time ago, um, it's not immediately profitable because they want to be seen as leaders in the space and not fall behind from competitors. And the idea is that if they secure a strong market position early, they're able to dominate later and then become highly profitable. So I guess you could say in the short term, profits might be sacrificed, but in the long term, this does allow for a competitive advantage within the firm.
Adding on to Zumar's claim, I think we have many examples of companies that are prioritizing, I would say, customer enjoyment and customer use of the app or of the chatbot. I feel like one example is DeepSeek, as DeepSeek is a loss leader, is using a loss leader method, which means that they are intentionally taking a loss on their AI chatbot in order to gain users and gain customers. So I think in this early day of the AI market, I think the main goal will be to establish users, as AI will just try to get better and better. And DeepSeek is using the chatbot to promote its other services. So I think it's just unique that we're seeing this type of strategy from multiple AI firms. Please, Master, go.
Yes, so Demir actually got onto my point where we are since in the early stages where we are seeing that a lot of AI firms have sort of free versions to gain customers and to gain more attention, but then eventually in the future and what Zumar said in the long run, we could see where almost all AI organizations or a majority of them will turn into a subscription based or a paid based promotion, and in that case they will be gaining more consistent profits as compared to now where we're seeing that a lot of people are just using the free versions and then eventually leading to them hitting usage limits and then many people buying into the subscriptions. But since we're still in the early stages, we are going to see that more organizations are in the lost leader technique where they're trying to gain more customers and they're trying to gain more attention rather than sort of maximizing profit.
Yeah, I agree with Master and Zumar. I think just before I let Zumar speak, I think Zumar, everything, most of what Zumar said was correct. A lot of the AI companies are using the loss leader pricing. Just to give our audience a little perspective on what loss leader pricing is that it involves selling a good or a service. In this case, it's a service below its cost value. So, for example, ChatGPT generated $3.7 billion in revenue in 2025, but they lost an estimated uh, amount of $5 billion, meaning that it's spending $1.35 for every dollar it earns. So it's making a huge loss. But the loss leader pricing method is basically is a way to become the market leader, as we know that AI is a highly competitive market with a lot of companies getting involved. So that's why companies are willing to make a loss for the first few years, to establish their place into the market, to let competitors know that they're here to stay and that they're the leaders of the market. And then that's when they're going to slowly start making profits, slowly start upping the prices on their subscriptions, so they actually make profits off it. But their first priority is to ensure that they get customers in and to actually use their AI. Azumar, please, would you like to go next?
I just had a question for the both of you, both you and Master. Do you think in the future that the market for AI bots or the usage of AI would ever become too saturated?
Saturated as in too competitive?
Yes, too competitive, where there's going to be essentially one AI model that it has some sort of a monopoly.
Oh, so
Yeah,
you're
and
asking.
also when he specifies to saturated, it's defined as too competitive as well as reduced market growth. So address both of these points, Rana. Thank you.
That's an interesting point you make. Currently now there's obvious, even though it's a very highly competitive market, there's only a few big dogs in the market itself, because we know that AI, and to actually hold an AI company, it's very expensive. It requires a lot of electricity, and it's just very expensive on the business owners. So we obviously don't see that much competition, but I do believe in the future that the competition in this specific market will rise, and there will be a lot of competitors, which in a sense is good, because these competitors are gonna make other companies compete for the best company in the AI market. So in hindsight, yes, I think competition will increase, and it's good for us, households or consumers. Master.
Adding on to your previous point, I actually don't think that it will be too saturated, simply because that, just chat box aside, there is many other forms of AI that is being used. Because aside ChatGPT, Claude, and DeepSeek, aside these the big three, there's also AI Nano Banana, which is for the usage of creating AI videos, and there is AIs to create AI presentations. So I think there is a diverse role in how AI is used, and then hence that it won't be too saturated or competitive towards one sort of w- uh, form of AI. Because even in Claude, if you see that you can connect your other apps to it, and then Claude will identify what emails you get in a day, and it will specify to you if it's an important email. So I think each AI chatbox will be diverse in their own way, in which it'll be, and in that sense, it won't be too saturated and have it in one AI being a monopoly, as there will be just many forms of how AI is being used.
That's a very insightful claim you made there, Master. It's actually like pretty interesting on how you guys are pretty solid on your knowledges on how AI is doing currently in the market. Like it was pretty interesting how OpenAI I saw the other day, like $13 billion in revenue. It sounds very impressive, but like one like interesting fact I could point out would be like the cost of like maintaining and actually growing these AI companies. For example, the $13 billion that I mentioned before for OpenAI, you could also see that like the spending on the software is actually pretty immense, because apparently they're also planning to spend $1.4 trillion over the 8 years. So that's kind of like interesting on how they're kind of revolutionizing the whole like idea of like a new technology entering the market. So
I
cost is like a big problem, like nobody actually talks about, because the more people who use these models, like the more like costs that are gonna like outrun them. And like serving AI responses at like a huge scale, which rises faster than the revenue they make. So like the more successful these AI companies get, the more expensive we could imagine it is to like monitor or like
uh,
maintain them.
uh, just a quick leech off of you.
Yeah.
Um, it's very important to note that the cost of running an AI isn't only monetary; it also has significant negative externalities of consumption. For example, one chat GPT search takes about 20 gallons of water, or I'm pretty sure there is another statistic for it. It's not only monetary, and that's something that AI companies and our future firms really need to focus on. The negative externalities of consumption.
That's yeah, I was just about to like mention that. That's actually like you said, it's kind of concerning on how like these models are like they're not just using like seawater or like normal water. They're using fresh like drinkable water that like society uses. So this is like a very big problem. And I like the way you actually stated it. It was actually stated pretty perfectly. Like you said, it was a negative externality of consumption, which is pretty true because the usage of AI, it's like, of course, it's helping us as a whole, but like in the future, it's also like raises the concern of like the availability of water, fresh water, specifically. So yeah.
Just to add on to what Zumar said, it's a very interesting statistic that you provided. I'm unsure if it's true or not, but assuming that it is true, um, I think people close their eyes when it comes to negative externalities when they're very dependent on a product like AI. So we see that human beings are using AI for their day-to-day for the day-to-day tasks, for school, for work, for chores. Since humans are so reliant on AI, I feel like that takes the ethics out of their brain when things like you said, when searching up one search in ChatGPT or another AI bot, it costs 20 gallons of water. I think that negative externality does not really matter, which is really bad because humans are so reliant on AI that they forget about the idea of ethics and sustainability. And would our guest speaker like to add on how we can perhaps combat this issue economically?
Yeah, just adding on to your point, I 100% agree of how we're so like in the world of AI where we don't even sort of realize that what we use is almost emptying a whole like villages drinking water. And how to combat it is going to be a very crucial matter and a very difficult matter because it is not just something where we can't just stop using AI like tomorrow. It's gonna sort of take a sort of really a plan that is involved and is going to be very different from country to country or from region to region. And it's going to be something where we can just stop using AI, but it's and not even limited. It's how we're going to sort of maybe re-engineer the AI models to use less water or look at a point of view where there is a sort of limit of how much AI you can use per day or sort of how much AI is or sort of the limit on how much water is being used in actually producing these AI engines. Demir, do you want to add on to something like this?
Yeah, I just want to ask you guys, since we think that the AI's detrimental effects to the environment is so crucial, do you guys think that we should apply a free market solution to this and let the market adjust itself? Or do you guys believe the government needs to step in and intervene? As I think this is a very important topic and question to discuss.
That is pretty interesting, Demir. Like, I just want to add on to that. Like Master said, our guest speaker, using AI is very important in our lives, especially in like the current modern world. And given that it has like a lot of negative aspects into like using them, I was just wondering, like, if this is the case, if we cannot stop using the electricity or like the internet for AI, then the real question becomes like, who is responsible for making sure that like this acceptance doesn't become like exploitation or like the exploitation of water? Because right now, AI companies are like scaling at such a speed that regulators, governments, and even like their own employees cannot keep up with. So are we just like collectively agreeing to hand the keys over to like, I don't know, the market as we call it, or and hope they drive responsibly, or like do we have to like, I don't know, find a solution to like fix this?
I have
I
a
believe that
prediction.
government intervention is necessary because, for example, just to move on a little bit from the water discussion, a company in London, just in a hypothetical example, buys an AI tool for their firm and then cuts its outsourcing contract with a Bangladeshi company. The London company saves money, but the Bangladeshi worker loses its income, right? So that leads to a detriment to the Bangladeshi economy. So I do believe that a little bit of government intervention is necessary to stop the negative externalities that AI is producing, such as unemployment rates, the detriment to sustainability and the environment. So, in my opinion, I do think government intervention is necessary to put actual like bars onto AI and the length they can produce. Zumar, I know you've been waiting for a while, so I think Zumar's thoughts is very important to share.
Thank you, Zohan, for passing the torch on to me. I definitely agree with you that government intervention needs to come across soon into the market for AI models itself. But when we take a step back into history, when oil was found in Saudi Arabia, in the US, in a bunch of other countries, most most countries did decide to capitalize on their newfound source of oil by nationalizing its companies. Do you think in the future companies will ever nationalize their AI models or their AI companies?
Zumar, the I like how you said nationalize, because let's talk about like the government question again, which somebody I forgot like who brought this up. But the nationalizing aspect is pretty interesting because um, the question was like about what was it again? It was like about governments intervening the AI problem, right? But the thing is, which government would it be? Because obviously we know OpenAI is American, but their models are being used all over the world, Bangladesh, Germany, Nigeria, whatever. But and if the US regulates like, or like if another government, not I don't need to just say the US, regulates heavily on like AI and another opposing country doesn't, you haven't like completely solved anything. You just like handed the like this whole situation to like someone else. And like AI companies know this, and like they're not like fully afraid of regulation. They're like, I feel like they're only afraid of like um uneven regulation, because that's actually what like kind of distorts or like makes a problem in the market. And let's be honest, for like governments who are like also like kind of notoriously bad at regulating things, they don't like, for example, regulating things they don't understand. For example, like the social media, which has been around for like 20 years, and they still haven't been like fully able to like regulate that. We're going to and you're talking about like just trusting the same institution who couldn't like control something for 20 years to govern something that moves 10 times faster. That's kind of interesting because intervention is necessary, but the more interesting question is like whether governments can even have the capacity to intervene meaningfully, or whether by the time any real policy lands, the technology has already moved like 3 generations ahead, and the regulation is just like a decorative factor. So that's kind of interesting.
Master, please.
Yeah, just adding on to Zumar's point on nationalizing AI. I think what happens is right now we're still seeing AI as private firms. OpenAI is a private firm. Claude AI Box is a private firm. So right now we're not seeing any nationalizing, but definitely in the future we could see where governments are nationalizing AI in the sense where their governments create their own AI source and sort of use it for national security. They could use it in installing. I was reading the other article there where many people have started putting AI into security cameras and then started using them in their home services and security. So maybe we could see government nationalizing it for their own personal security and use, but then that comes into another topic with ethics, well, which previously talked about. But I think Supreet now wants to move on into another discussion on how AI is being used in a more larger economic scale. Supreet, do you want to talk about that?
Thank you so much, Master, for such an insightful addition. I'm really grateful you were here with us today as our guest speaker. So, thank you everyone else as well for the invaluable discussions, because I think that now brings us to a slightly broader and perhaps more complex dimension of this conversation. And that is a question of ethics, responsibility, and the wider implication of AI beyond just economics. Because up until now, we haven't looked at AI through the lens of productivity, firms, and markets. Because AI doesn't operate in a vacuum, it directly interacts with society. Yes, although we have discussed the negative implications of both consumption and production relating to artificial intelligence, we haven't discussed some other implications, and that raises a different kind of question, not just on based on what AI can do, but what it should do. Because, for instance, one of the biggest concerns today is around bias. These models are trained on vast amounts of data, much of which reflects existing societal inequalities. And as a result, AI systems can end up reinforcing those same biases, whether in hiring decisions, financial assessments, or even access to information. Just to point out something, like in China with DeepSeek, we know how asking some questions that are related or sort of criticizes the Chinese government can lead to a blank response. And even with ChatGPT, we have seen how it can sometimes make the wrong assumptions and sort of even, I forgot what the process is called, but make up data, make up statistics, make up information that never really existed on the internet. Oh yes, it's called technological hallucination. It's a process where AI models make up data that's not found anywhere else on the internet. And beyond that, there's also a growing concern around over reliance, because as AI becomes more integrated into everyday decision making, I feel like we may risk becoming too dependent on it, and potentially at the cost of human judgment, creativity, and critical thinking. And in related to this, we know how these models have stolen personal property of artists, music creators, podcast hosts like us, and everyone else online, and are using this information to form responses to the wider customer base. And what makes this even more complex is that these ethical concerns are not separate from economics, because they're truly deeply connected. And we also know how firms are incentivized to scale quickly, to capture market share, and to maximize efficiency. And in that race, ethical considerations can sometimes become secondary. So that truly raises a key tension. And I would love to open this up to the floor. And I know Zumar Sheikh has really been waiting up for this moment.
Thank you so much, Supreet, for your insightful and educational input. I want to add on to I want to answer the question that you gave to us. When we do take a step back, the impact of AI isn't only economic, it does impact everyone and everything around us. It's mainly about ethics and responsibility. Just because companies are able to replace workers with AI, does that mean that they really should? There's a big question about like who's responsible for these consequences. Is it companies trying to cut costs and become more efficient, or is it governments that should be protecting jobs and making sure people aren't left behind? It goes way beyond just employment. AI systems are starting to make decisions that affect real people. For example, people that get hired, who gets a loan, or even what information we're able to see online. That raises many issues, just like you said, about bias, fairness, and transparency, because these systems aren't always neutral. They're built on an algorithm or data that can reflect real world inequalities, which is also a very important thing. And I just want to sum up and be done and move on. I'll give it to the next person here. I believe that in the long run, it's not just about productivity or economic growth. It's more about the kind of society that we're creating, or the path that the society wants to create for themselves. Are we moving towards a market where it's more efficient and that's the only thing that matters, or one where we still are able to prioritize human values, opportunities, and fairness? And just one last thing, I think the bigger question that we really should be asking is about not just what AI is able to do, but what we actually want to do with it and where we draw the line. Um, I believe Zohan would you like to speak about this?
That was beautifully said. That was very insightful. Thank you very much, Zumar Sheikh. So, just adding on to what Zumar said, the question of who is responsible is so important, right? Because when AI makes a wrong decision, who do you blame? When a doctor makes a wrong decision, I mean a wrong diagnose, you can sue the doctor. It's the doctor's fault. But when AI makes a wrong decision, who do you sue? Who do you blame? You don't really have anybody to blame right now. Nobody really has a clear answer. So we need to be very insightful on how we integrate AI, because for example, if we integrate AI into the medical world, if AI makes a wrong diagnose, again we go back to the question of whose fault is it? Who do we sue? Who's who? How can we get justice from this? So the question of who is responsible is so important, and the question of how do we integrate this powerful tool into our daily lives is super important as well.
Going on about the ethics, very beautifully said by Zohan and Zumar. I want to discuss the implications of AI on critical thinking. As I think what we are seeing is that AI is actually decreasing the capacity for humans to critically think. As why would they do the hard work and critically think, for example, a math problem when AI can solve it? And I think this is truly one of the scariest consequences of AI is that if we all become so dependent on AI to the point where we cannot think for ourselves in a world post AI, where let's say mysteriously one day AI will just disappear, we would all struggle immediately and not be able to function without AI. So I think the one of the biggest cost of AI is our ability to think. So I think we as a population and we as people need to know when to use AI and not, and have parameters which still allow us to grow our critical thinking and creativity while still being able to make use of AI. Arf?
Demir, sorry, Demir. Just one question, one very quick question. Who do you think should be able to set the parameters for AI regarding on when and where we should use it? Do you think the government should decide? Do you think, as a community, we should decide, or companies themselves?
I think that's a very good question. And honestly, I don't think you're going to get one consensus like parameter. Like, you're not going to get everyone to agree. So I think rather than trying to get one set of rules, we should have different rules apply, I guess, to different groups of people, and people for themselves can decide. Because some people would be willing to fully use AI and make AI do everything. Whereas I feel like some people would rather do the work themselves. So I think this is a question for personal preference, and yeah, that's what I think it
Yeah, that
is.
was beautifully said by you. Araf, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, one of the topics our host actually mentioned was the idea of hallucination, or like technological hallucination, I think what he called it. So basically, what I understand from it is basically it's when AI or like technological models associate themselves with like, or like give an answer so confident or like well structured with like fake credibility. It's and but in reality the information that it's actually giving is fake. So that's kind of interesting, and how AI actually exploits this instinct quite frequently, because as we've all had experiences with like AI giving fake data or like data that does not exist. There's a funny case of like a lawyer. I don't know if you guys know. An actual lawyer submitted a legal citation to the court that ChatGPT I think it was ChatGPT or some other AI model which generated. So the cases did not exist, and it was fully misquoted, not paraphrased, or it was just fully invented. And they passed it because it sounded exactly like a real legal language. So you could think it's like it's so like interesting how even a huge institution like a legal court, like a court just passed a legal case, which it was completely generated by AI. So this kind of is kind of concerning for like the future and how AI is moving in such a weird position right now. And it's also interesting on how like uh, higher ups or like higher institutions, which us as a society uh, depends on, for example, like a court. It like it's interesting on how they pass on some like something that fake so easily. So now if we scale that situation to like millions of people making daily medical, financial, legal decisions, which is informed by a system that is structurally incapable of knowing when it's wrong or when it's right, that's not like a technical problem, it's like a whole societal one. So that's kind of interesting on how AI is moving in such a direction. So yeah.
Araf, that was beautifully. That was a very insightful topic that you decided to bring up about technological hallucinations.
Yeah, thank you.
Master, you're welcome, Araf. Master, please add on. You are our esteemed guest speaker. You have a bunch of knowledge regarding artificial intelligence. Please go, Master.
Yeah, so adding on to the point of AI hallucination, I think this will slowly start becoming less and less every day because if you guys remember in the early days of ChatGPT, it would not even give you recent information. It would give you information updated till 2020 or there was some sort of threshold, but now it's still giving you later and updated information. So I think the more we get into using AI and the more information we start feeding AI, the more updated, the more recent information it will give. So I think this hallucination will slowly start to decrease. And I think firms that create AI will sort of find loopholes to avoid these. And then adding on, it sort of talks about how firms can start to regulate these because eventually I think it will come down to a point where AI will be so tailored to firms that it won't that to firms and people with the more prompts we put in, the more information we give it, that it will just be very tailored to each specific person and or each specific firm. So I think this is another point in which we can talk about in how firms are going to be using this specifically to for themselves and how this will create an overall impact on the usage of AI and how this data that AI receives will impact a larger scale on the global economy.
Just before we end, I would like to add on. I'm unsure if this has been mentioned or not. The idea of deep fake um, by AI. So AI can now create hyper realistic videos and images of almost everything. And this puts the idea of democracy up on the ropes, which us humans value so much. So, for example, politicians can be made to say whatever they want for something that they never said just by the use of one button. And ordinary people can be put into videos without their consent due to there not being actual regulations being put on AI. So this again puts the idea of democracy up on the ropes. Can you trust everything you see? Can you trust everything you hear? So again, AI is a very helpful tool, but it's also a very dangerous tool when it comes to ethics. Demir, what do you want?
Okay, well, I just want to address how I think, in terms of firms that are working or providing products with AI, I feel that in their goals and in their objectives, they would 100% put ethical considerations not at the forefront. I feel that this is because, as a firm, I think firms like OpenAI, DeepSeek, Claude, Anthropic, they just want to establish that market position, and they just, because they are predicting that the AI market will become much larger and become very profitable and necessary for us as a human population to strive forward. So I think that in that idea, I think firms will intentionally not focus on ethics, but still have an idea of ethics. I think they won't take the forefront, but they'll be part of a firm's plan. Thank you.
Do you guys have anything else you would like to add before we move on to the final conclusion?
Supreet, I think that was it. I think the conclusion will wrap our discussion up very nicely.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Zohan.
so I think we had like a very fruitful discussion on this topic. I'm actually happy that our hosts and especially our esteemed guest Master was able to contribute effectively. And yeah, I'm just happy like this went smoothly.
Thank you so much, Araf. That was such a nice addition. Especially you complimented our guest speaker, which is always encouraged. So I think that brings us to a really important point of reflection because throughout this episode, we have looked at artificial intelligence from multiple angles, its impact on labor, the way firms are structuring around it, the economics behind different models, and the broader ethical considerations that come with it. And what becomes clear is that AI isn't just another technological development. It's not just like the Industrial Revolution, it's something that is actively reshaping the foundation of how economies operate. It's changing what it means to be truly productive, what it means to be competitive, and increasingly what it means to create value. But at the same time, it's also introducing new uncertainties around jobs, around market power, around surveillance, around how responsibly this technology is being developed and used. So while the opportunities are for sure plentiful, so are the trade offs. And ultimately, how these trade offs are managed by firms, by governments, and by individuals will determine whether AI becomes a force for broad based progress or something that deepens existing divides. So before we wrap up, Master, I just wanted to bring in our guest speaker, Masrur Mehadi. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to add, or anything you think we haven't fully addressed in today's discussion?
No, I'd just like to say it was, I think, a really good discussion. We went on a lot of points, everything from employment to the ethics and how possibly regulating AI. But just as a conclusion, AI is something which we are going to be a part of. The more future we go, more we go into the future. I am thinking that there is going to be more usage of AI, and it's going to be used in the efficiency aspect of being more efficient in with our everyday lives and jobs. And I think eventually AI will have a larger role in the overall economy. And yeah, I'd just like to say thank you guys for having me here. It was a very good discussion, and it was a very insightful discussion as well.
Thank you.
It
Thank
was
you.
an honor to have you.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
Thank you.
definitely agree with Zohan. Thank you so much for enlightening us with your perspectives on artificial intelligence and its impact on our global economic uh, area. Thank you so much, Master.
Yes,
Thank
Thank you
thank
to
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Master Mehdi, for that final concluding statement. So, viewers, thank you for listening to today's episode, which was episode number 1, the economics of intelligence, AI, firms, and the future of work. So, stay tuned for another episode next week with another very interesting guest speaker. Thank you and goodbye for now. We'll see you in the next episode.